Hey everybody, this is Devin Francis, also known as Leonard Meltzner.
And I am Victoria Francis, the writer
The auteur
of this episode. I don't have a scarf on, so I'm pretending to be Devin.
Could it be a Norma Desmond?
It could be.
Alright, it's episode 135, take 2, because this is the second episode in a row that we lost, but we figured out now why it was happening, so it's not going to happen again.
Yeah. So this episode is the top 10 Odyssey adaptations. So this is adaptations of fictional works like books and movies that Odyssey did in its episodes. Like, for example, It's a Pokenberry Christmas is It's a Wonderful Life. And Devin found all the different adaptations that we're going to count for this. We're not going to do things that are like spoof parodies, kind of like Lassie or Rescue 911 and stuff like that.
Yeah, things that parody format or that are like really short gags, like The Lion Thing and I Want My BTV, or like the shorts about like Paul, Apostle Paul, and stuff like that don't count.
Oh, that didn't last long.
Things that are like the whole episode, except for like the closest thing we have to something that's only a partial bit of an episode is BTV, but only if it's the story by Bernard, because that's the main story throughout the episode. So bearing that in mind, we have 17 items on the list, correct?
Sounds right
to choose from. So I'll read off the list.
Yeah, 17.
So here are...
In no specific order.
Yes. Yes, once again, it is in a specific order.
Not like...
It's in chronological order. Here are the episodes up on the chopping block for this list, which,
so,
by the way, isn't actually a top 10 list. They're all ranked.
They're all ranked, but Devin picked out all the episodes, and then
this is actually a top 17 list. It's a top 10 bottom 7 list, technically.
It's like top 10, and then the dud list.
Yeah, so technically you counted down from the top and up from the bottom, and met whatever 10 over 7.
The most mediocre adaptation possible.
Okay, so here's the list. Number 1, Gifts for Madge and Guy, which is Gift of the Magi. Number 2, A Thanksgiving Carol, which is A Christmas Carol. Number 3, An Act of Nobility, The Prisoner of Zenda. Number 4, My Fair Bernard is My Fair Lady. 5, Terror from the Skies is War of the Worlds. Number 6, Pilgrim's Progress Revisited is Pilgrim's Progress, obviously. Number 7, Blind Justice is 12 Angry Men. Number 8, Merchant of Odyssey is The Merchant of Venice. Number 9, It's a Pokenberry Christmas is It's a Wonderful Life. And number 10, Sunset Bowlawater is Sunset Boulevard. 11, The Seven Deadly Dwarves is Snow White. Number 12, The Great Wishy Woz is The Wizard of Oz. Number 13, Stage Fright is Phantom of the Opera. Number 14, A Thankstaking Story is The Grinch That Stole Christmas. Number 15, Groundhog Jay is Groundhog Day. 17, Pinocchio, Tale of Foolish Puppets, Pinocchio, and 17, BTV-Revenge.
You said 17 twice.
16 is Pinocchio, 17 is BTV-Revenge.
You're
is the Mount
focusing on your sign language
the Count
more
of
than
Monte
reading
Cristo.
the list out loud.
Well, no, I was focusing on the items. It was because the name of Pinocchio. I was going to say Pinocchio, and instead of full name.
That's because that's what you sent me. I fixed it.
It's the Count of Monte Cristo. The Count of the Monte Cristo.
Okay. So...
By the way, this is Victoria's episode.
Yeah,
she hasn't
this is on mine.
Yet.
I did.
She did the whole thing because she's...
In the introductions, I said I was the person who wrote this episode.
She's a smart gal who specializes in literature and specifically in adaptations and...
Yeah, several of the books that we're going to be looking at, I have read.
Or are reading.
Or am currently... No, I finished Pilgrim's Progress.
Okay. I did not know that.
Ago. I finished it like the morning after we originally recorded the episode. For how much I was paying attention to it, that is.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's
we've...
enthralling, isn't it?
Not really. And we've both seen quite a few of these movies. I've seen more of them than Devin has. My voice is kind of scratchy. Sorry about that.
That's okay. You'll sound like Griffin giving the Amnesty intro.
I'm gonna sound so smooth and silky with my voice cracks.
Yeah.
Devin and I did watch a couple movies to prepare in advance for this list. They were Sunset Boulevard and 12 Angry Men. So, number 1. Do you remember what number 1 on the list is, Devin?
Yes. It's Gifts from Madge and Guy.
Yep. /
Gifts of the Magi.
Yeah.
What happens, Victoria?
So, in this, it's basically scene for scene in both adaptations, so the summary is going to apply to both of them. So there's this couple, and they're pretty strapped for cash.
They're not named Madge and Guy in the short story, I don't think.
No, they're not.
I read it in grade 10, I think, English. It's very short.
They don't have names.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
So there's this couple, and they don't have very much money. So then, but it's Christmas. It's Christmas, though, and they want to get each other gifts. So the woman sells her hair so she can buy her husband a watch strap, and the man sells his watch. Yeah, that's
one
what I meant.
hanging up on a nail.
Watch chains. So, and he sells his watch so he can get her some special combs, and it's all about the meaning of giving and Christmas and stuff.
The guy really got the raw end of the deal in this
Yeah,
story.
I know. What I always think about is how, like, she can always just, like, sell her hair and they can always buy back all that stuff later on.
I guess so.
I've always that's always made me feel a little bit better because I think it's kind of a sad story.
Yeah, that's a good point. I like, because in the episode she's like, my hair will grow back and then I can use the brushes. And then for him it's like, I can kind of tuck the chain in my pocket and make it look like I have a cool, like, pocket chain.
Watch. That's something I would do. There's this Mid Bim Bam bit where, like, he gets the watch chain. They said, like, what if he didn't sell his watch and he didn't get her anything? So then, like, he gets the watch and the watch chain. He's like, oh, great, but now you're bald. And then he dumps her, and then he, like, walks down the street, and he's like, hey, you're pretty hot. Check out my cool watch. And it got animated by, like, the special Mabim Bam editors. And she's, like, crying and bald, and it's sad.
Henry, you terrible, terrible bad man and mediocre chocolate bar.
But for this episode, everything is pretty much beat for beat in the adaptation, aside from the comedy that's thrown in, like with Pop's top-notch top chop.
That wasn't a great delivery.
You're supposed to say bad delivery. I can never do it good.
Pop's top-notch top notch. That's the first time
bad
in my life.
Delivery.
That was the first time in my life I've messed it up.
I don't believe you. Okay.
On camera.
On camera.
Pop top.
He can't do it now.
Pop's
it's
top-notch top
anxiety about saying that line.
Pop cropped my top at Pop's top-notch crop shop. I got one word wrong there. Like, said it perfectly the first recording.
Are you going to destroy this recording too, so you can do it right the next time?
I went to Pop's top-notch top shop. Pop cropped my top and gave me $20 for
this
it.
This is my episode. Be quiet.
No.
Okay. So, this episode is definitely the best adaptation. There's basically no difference between the two of them, and it does a really good job. So, number 2. Do you remember what number 2 was?
Thanksgiving Carol. I know it's not, because I said that over and over.
Do you have another guess?
Pokenberry Christmas.
You're right!
Oh, nice.
Okay, so,
Victoria made me guess every single spot on the first one, and I got every single one wrong.
It's Pokenberry Christmas / It's Wonderful Life. So, in, It's a Wonderful Life, as many of you know, there's this guy named George Bailey, and we see, like, basically his entire life, and there's all these things he wants to do and stuff, but all these plans keep on getting all messed up. In the process, good things happen to him, but he more so focuses on the bad things, and it's like, same, George, same. And then one day he just decides, like, after all this money gets lost for the bank he works at, he decides
it was a fistful of cash.
Yeah, it was a lot
adjusted
of money.
for inflation.
This movie's old.
It was like $300,000.
Yeah, and so he decides to off himself, but then this angel named Clarence like shows him what his life would be like if no one ever knew him, if he was never born, and he's like, man, this sucks, and my wife's a librarian. God, why did you do this to her?
It was like
I'm like offended by that.
Like night.
He's like, she's a spinster librarian.
It was like Night Vale / Parks and Rec levels of librarian hatred.
Like the music swells and it's like, stop. So, but
and then
yeah,
it's all good, and
then he decides that he's not gonna kill himself, and then everything's all good.
And the bell rings, and the little girl says, "God bless us, everyone."
Sure, we'll go with that. And so in the Odyssey episode, it's pretty similar, except for the fact that this is about the Barclays, and we've known them for a very long time, so we can't delve into their past like that. It's one of the last episodes. Actually, it's the last episode where we get the entire family.
Mm-hmm.
So they're... So George is the pastor at the Pokenberry Church, and money goes missing, and there are a whole bunch of other things that just aren't going good at the church. And then Whit and Eugene come because they know that he's been going through a hard time with everything due to a letter that was sent to them by Mary. And then George is like going on a walk by the bridge, and Eugene sees him, and he thinks he's gonna off himself, and then Eugene, like, runs over, but slippery, so he falls off the bridge, and then George dives in after him to save him, and then Eugene confusingly plays the role as the angel Clarence from that point on.
I feel like, and I could be wrong, because there's this, like, mild ongoing gag through the entire show of people meeting Eugene and messing up his name. I feel like someone has called him Clarence at some point.
I don't know if I'd say Clarence, but he has been called things like close to Clarence.
Yeah.
I want to say by like Dr. Meisterberger.
Yeah.
In album 5. But so where was I? So then they see like all the different things that happened to George, and I will say that I think George's life without being born is substantially sadder.
Here's an important thing. It's not his
George
life.
Bailey's.
It's not him not being born. It's never moving to Pokenberry Falls.
Yeah. So like.
So instead, he just keeps on not having a job and then being a homeless bum without his family in Odyssey.
So it's not like his wife never met him, so they never had kids. It's like he did have all that. But then his wife left him, and his kids left him with their mom, which would make sense. Yes. It'd be weird if they went somewhere else. And like the church was turned into a golf course, I believe. And all this other stuff. And then he's like, "Oh, I wish it never happened." And then it was like a dream or something.
Similarity-wise, it's like a lot. Because
it's pretty good.
Obviously, this was like the perfect last episode for the Barkley family.
Because it was the culmination of the ongoing running joke with It's Pokenberry Christmas that has them with like every single episode, because as most of you know, all the names of the Barkley family characters are based off of the characters from It's a Wonderful Life, both the characters' names and the actors' names.
Yep.
And then Bailey was just turned into Barkley.
Yeah. Yeah, so they've been like a Wonderful Life reference for their entire existence. And then as soon as they moved to Pokenberry Falls, there was like partial references to Mayberry with it. On the one hand, which is the town from Andy Griffith's show. Yeah. Which is what the title of Pokenberry Falls RFD is referencing. But then also even in there, they were already putting in Wonderful Life, yeah.
They're putting in that one guy
because
from
Lionel
the
Barry
church.
is in there as Barry Lionel. And
that one's the most subtle of all of them.
Exactly.
Guys.
There's like Potter's Field or whatever and stuff, and like there's a lot of like specific names. There's specific lines all throughout it that are like very kept. My favorite.
It's like a really good payoff.
My favorite clever thing was like the bike pedal versus the flower petals.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. George goes, his ears is messed up after he comes out of the river and stuff.
In the movie, and then in the movie that happens when he's like a boy and his brother goes under, but once George falls in the water with Eugene, he can't hear out of that ear for the rest of the episode until he wakes up from the dream or whatever.
And the scene from when George Bailey's younger is like them in present day with like Donna and Jimmy in front, and it's like it's all in there.
So like instead of George Bailey's brother falling under the ice when they were kids,
Eugene eating the chicken wings at the end.
Donna falls under the ice, and Jimmy has to save her at the very beginning of the episode, like in the background.
I mean, I don't think he has to save her. She just kind of gets wet.
Yeah, she's just like ah.
Yeah. And
then no one pays attention to the fact that Donna just fell through ice and could be suffering. But
my favorite thing
maybe that's why it was her last episode.
I really like the really dramatic when George like blows his lid at them, and then Jimmy's like, "Oh, Daddy," as like really super melodramatically. Because that's the way the little young girl says in the movie. Anyways,
that's a good delivery, Dave. It's a really good delivery. Do you remember what the next one is?
12 Angry Men?
Yes.
Nice.
So you're doing pretty good so far.
Thank you.
So this one, 12 Angry Men, which is Blind Justice. I watched it last week. You watched it like the night before we did the original recording.
Yeah, which is like 3 days ago now.
And it's like, it is such a good movie.
It was really
I've heard good things about it, but like, I didn't think I would love it. It is officially one of my favorite movies. It's from 1957. Yes. So it's definitely one of the older movies I've seen. Not the oldest by a long shot that is live action, at least.
I thought...
It's the oldest... No. For you now, in terms of live action old movies, Sunset Boulevard is your oldest.
Is that older than It's a Wonderful Life?
Oh, wait. Probably not.
Probably not. For the longest time, I thought that this movie was what Ocean's 11 was because...
no, It's a Wonderful Life is older.
I knew it. I thought that this movie is what Ocean's 11 was and that it was like 11 people on a jury. And when I heard they were making Ocean's 8, I was like, oh, cool, they're remaking it. But it's like kind of weird because there's supposed to be a set number of people on a jury. And then when the first trailer for Ocean's 8 came out and I watched it and I was like, this isn't a jury movie. And then I realized it was 12 Angry Men, which I was one off.
The oldest live action movie I've seen is Jekyll and Hyde from 1931. So blind... Wait, should I do them?
12 Angry Men.
Okay, 12 Angry Men. So 12 Angry Men is about, it's all white men, for starters. I think there's 11, no, there's 13 actors in the movie. So there's like the bailiff, I guess.
Yeah.
And then all of the different jury members. So our main character is played by Henry Fonda. He's very charming. He did a very good job. So he is the main character, and the case that everyone's looking at is this African-American guy who supposedly...
This kid.
Yeah. Who's a teenager. He supposedly stabbed his father to death. And they're trying to figure out if it actually happened, like going through different witness testimonies and like examining the murder weapon. And whether it supposedly is the only one of its kind and stuff like that.
I think you're missing the important part, which is
But the important thing is, since this is from 1957, and he is black...
No, the important...
A lot of it is about racism, and the ending is different.
You're missing kind of the crux of the plot, the basic concept of the plot, which is that everyone
thinks he's guilty except for Henry Fonda, who plays Davis in this movie. And he... defends the case And one by one, everyone, spoilers, changes their vote and decides that the person is not guilty.
Yeah.
But the ending is different than the Odyssey episode. In the Odyssey episode, it's Eugene and Bernard, and they're on jury duty with 3 other people. And one of them is a woman, so how far we have come with law. So the 4 of them think that the person's guilty. Eugene doesn't, so he's Henry Fonda's character, Davis. And then 3 of the people, including Bernard, changed their votes, but one guy doesn't because he thinks that the case, which is very different in this version, it has to do with a kid
It's a robbery.
Yeah, it's a robbery, and the kid who supposedly did it might have been a part of a gang, but it's
the stakes in the original are a lot higher because if he gets convicted in the original,
he's gonna get the electric chair.
Yeah. No, like, he could get the electric chair. He will if they decide guilty. So it's a very, like, the consequences are
and also,
a lot heavier.
The original one deals with racism a lot. But both of the stories have the antagonist, who's, like, the main guy who refuses to change his vote. It's because he thinks that this has to do with, like, disrespecting children and how they...
Angry McShouderman.
Yeah. It's like... what did you say about the movie version? You said, like, he was, like, 5 times worse than the Odyssey version. He was so terrible.
He was so bad. So in the...
He was so mean.
In the movie, it ended with it turning out that, like... Well, there was 2 angry... There was, like, old angry guy and young angry guy, who were both, like, the same character in my mind. Like, they even looked pretty similar. Like, they were just different timeline versions of people.
Or, like, the same character in the 2 adaptations?
No, like, the 2 guys in the jury in the movie.
So, like, one was racist.
There's the old guy who was racist, and the other was harboring personal prejudice against his relationship with his son that he was projecting onto this kid. And so, in the end... The difference is that in the end, these guys both, like, realized, like, oh, this is the prejudice I have, and they all decided to vote not guilty, and then, like, that was the verdict carried through.
I still think that one guy didn't want to vote not guilty.
Yeah, he just more, like, gave up.
Yeah, the guy who is upset about his son.
Oh, him too, yeah.
Yeah.
But in the Odyssey episode, in Blind Justice, it ends with Angry McShouderman accidentally revealing that he had a past personal connection to the defendant, and so it was a hung jury, and so they had to declare a mistrial, but all of the notes where they had realized that he was actually innocent got carried over to the next jury, so they probably would have acquitted him.
Yeah,
but that's the other big difference.
That's, like, a really big thing in the movie. Like I said, the ending is different. There are quite a few points early on in the movie where they say, like, if this is a hung jury, it's going to be a completely new group of people. Our notes aren't going to get looked at. This kid...
I don't remember them saying something about their notes being lost.
It said, like... it said everything from this jury it'll be like it never happened, this conversation, in terms of future jury and trial and stuff. And so the kid definitely would have gotten the electric chair. Which is why Davis was so insistent on everyone else changing their vote and stuff. Because he knew that he was the only chance this person had. And another big thing is the kid is definitely innocent in the Odyssey one because they solved the case. In 12 Angry Men, he might not have been innocent. They show
that he couldn't have done it, but they do not solve the case. And they're like, we don't know for sure that he's not guilty, but it appears very strongly that he couldn't have done it. And so... we have reasonable doubt, which means we need to vote not guilty. And they emphasize this in both versions of it, and I like that they carried that through, like, the concept of expressing, like, it's not vote guilty if you know he's guilty, vote not guilty if you know he's not guilty. If you have a reasonable doubt, you have to err on the side of not guilty.
It's very much about the theme of justice, and it's such a good movie. Watching the movie made me love the episode even more, and I already really liked the episode.
There's a lot of direct quotations from the original movie that were in the Odyssey episode.
Yeah.
And it was, like, it was chilling, like, watching the movie, and then they, like, say this dramatic line, all of a sudden you're like... I recognize
even
this
just
line.
like a couple minutes in, like disputes between multiple characters and some like bickering they have. I'm like, all of that is in the Odyssey episode. I am so impressed.
Lines and like the different arcs that they did and stuff.
Like the Odyssey episode's a lot more fast paced because
and less characters and stuff.
Everyone kind of like changes their vote at the same
time,
more or less.
I always felt like there's way more characters.
It's basically like one or two people at a time change their vote in the movie because that's the entire case being discussed over an hour and a half, and it was never boring for 1 minute, even though it was basically just all in the same location more or less. And it was shot beautifully. There was this one shot where one guy was just like going on a tangent and everyone realized like, oh, he's just saying this because of his personal prejudice, and they all like stand up one by one from the table and like face away from him, and I'm like, this shot is so good, the composition, I love movies. And yeah, in my opinion, this was definitely the best done adaptation in terms of just like pure creativity and adjusting to the new medium of it being an audio and the genre of it being specifically a Christian radio series for family. So it's not like murder and it's not dealing with racism, but it's such a good adaptation. It's really good.
Does murder turning to robbery have anything to do with it being Christian themed?
No, it's just more desensitized, I guess.
Yeah. More family friendly, yes.
Yeah. Okay, do you remember what number 4 is? You're on a hot streak. You've got 3 in a row.
Oh, now the pressure builds up.
Yep. If you get all 17, I will buy you a bag of candy. I am being completely serious.
Yeah, I know you are. You could offer to buy me a house.
I will buy you a car.
Because this is never going to happen. The streak is going to break right now, because the next one, I don't think it's a Thanksgiving Carol yet. So
I can't even remember what the list is off the top of my head. If you can, it'll be a miracle.
The problem is I can't remember what the choices are.
Okay, 3, 2, 1.
The Thanksgiving Carol.
It is, I don't have to buy you candy, Pilgrim's Progress Revisited / Pilgrim's Progress. So this is just adapting the first half of the Pilgrim's Progress book because, as I recently found out, the second half is about like first half is Christian.
Well, they're two different books.
The city, the celestial city, and the second half is his wife and kids because he's a deadbeat dad and he ditched them traveling to the celestial city.
It's not two halves. It's a book and a sequel.
Well, it's sold as 2 halves.
Well, yeah.
Kind of like Little Women is.
Yeah, but it's still 2 different books.
I know, it's still 2 different books of Little Women.
It's not half.
Anyway, so with Pilgrim's Progress,
I thought they took some of the characters from the second half, but I guess not because you just read it.
No, not that I noticed.
So all of the characters in the audio version were in the part that you read, except for Busy Work
showed up.
Yeah, because she's the only one they added.
But everyone else, yeah.
Okay.
So all the characters who appear in the Odyssey episode are in Pilgrim's Progress, which is about, both of them apply here. It's pretty good. Because
it was a kids' radio episode, so there's no like narrative contrivance to fit the adaptation, and it's just straight up and down.
So this is an allegory about going to heaven, basically, and it's about this main guy named Christian, and he meets these different people and like goes through these different trials along the way, like Busy Work and Apollyon and Ignorance, and there's Mr. Evangelist, who's my favorite character, which is intensified immensely by the fact that 1, he's the only not dumb character in the story, basically, and 2, in terms of Odyssey, he's played by Bernard, so, like, what's not to love? And so, he meets different people and makes different friends who are, like, gonna travel with him, but, like, all of them either give up or die, except for Hopeful, and then they, like, make it to the celestial city together, and that's heaven. And in Pilgrim's Progress Revisited, it's, like, basically the same thing, but the story's pretty serialized. So, like, a lot of pretty contained events happen in tandem.
Not in tandem, because that would mean at the same time.
Oh, no, chronologically.
Yes.
I can't talk today.
It's just a whole bunch of, like, disconnected, not order-specific, necessary events.
Yeah, for the most part. Hopeful's name is changed to Hope, and Hopeful becomes Lucy. In the original, Hopeful's a guy. And Christian travels with, like, a lot of people at some points, and that's, like, completely cut out. Some events are cut out, but, like, a lot are left in. If it weren't for the fact that the tone matches the source material 100% of the time with this adaptation, unlike the next thing we're going to get to on the list, then this would be... Then the next thing on the list would have taken the number 4 spot instead of this one. I don't really have much to say on this one. It's a really good adaptation. It's just lower on the list because it cut things out. Do you have anything to say?
I don't think so. The original, of course, as most of you probably know, I'm sure I mentioned, is a novel by John Bunyan. He wrote it early 1600s.
I wanted to say John Bunyan, but then Tom or Whit's voice in my head was like, that was the big blue ox guy. And I was just like, so I didn't.
Yes, that's Paul Bunyan. John Bunyan also appears in BTV Grace.
There were some parts, like, early on in the book. The book's written weirdly. It like, cuts between prose and basically, like, script format, like it's a play. It's really weird. But there were some parts, like, really early on in the book. Very early on, probably about, like, page 8 or so.
Wait. I can't believe I didn't ask you this when you were reading it. When you're reading, like, the first page of the story, were you reading it like...
I know you're going to ask, and the answer is yes.
Where was the den? Where was the den?
Parts
I know I lay
read...
down there and I dreamed a dream. What else did you dream?
So, like, while I was reading it, there were definitely parts where Tom and Harlow's voices were reading it for me, like, from Best Intentions. So, like, the beginning, but then, Harlow...
You'll be playing! Okay, but who am I playing? Oh, boy.
So, the other part where I was just like, please let this actually be word for word. Where it's just like, have you a wife and children, sir? And it's just like, tell it to me straight. And I was just like, when I was reading that, I was like listening with the audiobook and I was like, tell it to me straight. And it was good. It was good stuff. I just need that for the entire book. I wish that was the audiobook I listened to. It would have been so much better. So, number 5. This is the one that would have taken the number 4 slot if this one wasn't lots of the time tonally incongruent with the original. I think that's the right word?
Incongruent, yeah, that works. Yeah. Yes, you gave this hint twice, and just like last time.
You can't remember?
I can't remember. If I could look at the list, then I would be able to pick it out.
At the list. What do you want to guess?
I'm trying to think through things.
It's like I'm Leon and I'm like, Candy Station.
Not Resident Evil 4 Leon.
No, Taz Leon.
Yes. The Artificer.
3, 2, 1.
It's words. You just rolled off my tongue.
It's a Thanksgiving Carol. It's Thanksgiving Carol.
No!
So, this one's based off of A Christmas Carol. As you should know by now, this is the most adapted book ever. How do you not know the plot? Jeez, it was written by our cousin, Charlie Dickens.
I was on the right track with Thanksgiving, but I knew that Thanksgiving Carol...
Thanksgiving for every single one. It means nothing after a while. Anyway, so this was written by Charles Dickens, and it's a book about this miser named Scrooge who owns a money-lending business, and he doesn't like Christmas. He's very grumpy, and he yells humbug and stuff.
Alright, you don't have to explain in that much detail, Victoria. They do know the story.
He gets visited by 3 ghosts, and then he becomes nice.
The end.
Because they terrorize him into being nice, more or less. So, Thanksgiving Carol is the same thing.
And that's how Charles Dickens invented Scared Straight.
Thanksgiving Carol's the same thing, but it's a kids' radio program, I believe. And Bernard plays Scrooge, and it takes place on Thanksgiving, and it cuts out some scenes for time.
And also because it's about Thanksgiving, not Christmas, so, you can only adapt so much of it.
Yeah. So it's pretty spot on all points, and super similar with the dialogue, as you'd expect, despite it all being about a different holiday.
Because we can all recite A Christmas Carol by memory by this point in our lives.
Yeah, but they do throw in, like, some comedy, and also the fact that it's a different holiday makes the tone kind of different.
Yeah, because it's about thankfulness.
And not only can it not be, like, 20 minutes long, it's also, like, there's stuff bookending it with, like, Whit and Connie and Eugene, so it's even shorter than that.
Yes.
So that is number 5. I don't really have a lot to say about it that I haven't said. Is there anything you want to say?
I don't think so.
That one's pretty straightforward. Number 6.
What's it called? I keep on saying Prisoner for Christ. The Prisoner Zenda.
No, I thought you were going to get for a second. It has the in the title. It's the Great Wishy Woz.
It has the in the title. How could you not figure it out? It's the most common word in the English language.
The Great Wishy Woz / The Wizard of Oz. So Wizard of Oz, there's this girl named Dorothy who ends up in Oz, and she meets these friends along the way and goes to the wizard to, like, go home, and they go to get all of these things they want, and then they have to kill a witch, and then she goes home.
And the wizard's phony and stuff, and then it's all happily ever after.
And Great Wishy Woz, it's pretty much all the same stuff. This one's also kids radio. There's a lot of kids radio adaptations. Dorothy's played by Mandy. There's a lot of comedy in here, which is why it's this far down on the list, because they change a lot of things. Like, they change.
It gets increasingly different as it goes on.
Yeah. And also it has a moral, which, like, encompasses a good chunk of the plot.
That is very distinctly different than the moral of The Wizard of Oz, which is
and she gets home in a very different way.
Leads to a lot of the differences between the plots.
And
they're both musicals.
And instead of just, like, getting the one thing from the witch, all of them have to get different things to like bring the wizard, so they all have, like, little different side quests, so, like, that's all very different.
Yeah. So
but,
we still,
like, the general framework is, like, similar enough to call it a pretty faithful adaptation. Like, you'll definitely know what it's adapting.
We still have this young girl from the countryside and her dog, and she gets swept up in a tornado.
And they have
to
songs,
Woz. Exactly.
which
Their songs
are very similar.
We still have, like,
this is a movie we're talking about, not Frank Baum's book.
We still have, like, the Tin Man and the Psychedelic Lion and the Scarecrow and stuff. And we have the Wicked Witch, although she turns out to be, like, Glinda also in the end.
It's weird.
And the wizard is also, like, a fake,
The wizard's a fake, but then there's this other guy who's Jesus.
Yeah.
And he's my favorite character.
And you can tell, like, he's Jesus because of his voice.
He's, like, the most soothing voice ever. I would say dare I say it's more soothing than Griffin giving the opening monologue to Taz Amnesty.
You dare not. Thank you very much.
I just did. So, yeah. Did you remember what the author's name to The Wizard of Oz was? What?
Frank Baum.
Yep, you're right.
Because you just said it, and also because, yes, I do know it.
I wasn't sure.
Generally speaking, I do know who wrote it.
Did you know that he was a racist, though?
I probably could have guessed that because of the time period he was from, when everybody was a racist.
Okay. So, what do you think number 7 is?
An Act of Nobility.
Nope. I'll give you another guess because I'm nice. Candy Station.
7 Deadly Dwarves.
No. Try again.
BTV-Revenge.
Okay, he's just saying ones he knows aren't on the list now.
Also because I can't remember what's left on the list.
This one's Pinocchio. Tale of a Foolish Puppet, based on Pinocchio. So, who wrote Pinocchio, Devin?
Carlos Collodi.
And he is,
Collodi.
He is an Italian man who wrote...
He was an Italian man.
He is dead now.
Yes. I'm sorry to break it to you. I'm sorry you had to learn it. I'm sorry you had to learn it from us.
It's very sad.
He has passed on.
So, Pinocchio was originally written in the newspaper, which we learned from the Odyssey episode. And it was written in little snippets, so it's very episodic in format. And because of that, it is, like, very, very, very long. But, just like with the Great Wishy Woz, you can definitely tell what Odyssey is adapting with this one, and it's also a kids' radio program. And Pinocchio is played by my boy Jay. So in Pinocchio, there's this, wooden puppet who's, like, magical just from the start. And his dad is this woodcarver named Geppetto, and Pinocchio is the worst, trademark. And he gets
all times of the day.
Yeah, all the time. And so he does all these like different bad things.
Here's some discourse. Do you think Pinocchio is worse in the original story or in Kingdom Hearts 1?
In the original story.
Okay.
Pinocchio in Kingdom Hearts 1 never murders anyone. He just runs off and I have to, like, chase him because Riku is being a jerk. Anyway, so, Pinocchio does, like I just said, he murders Jiminy Cricket in the original.
And
which also happens in the episode. And just like in the episode, Jiminy comes back without any explanation. Except for, I think he actually killed Jiminy, like, twice in the book. And he also comes back afterwards, I'm pretty sure.
The thing is, Pinocchio wasn't very well versed at etymology. He didn't realize Jiminy's not a cricket, he is a cockroach. And no matter how many times you step on him or irradiate him, he will come back.
Or throw things at him and squish him.
Or drive over him with your treads because you're Wally.
I believe he's actually in the, I'm not going to say what kind yet, in the fish with them at the end in the book. Unlike in the Odyssey version.
The interesting thing, and we talked about this when we reviewed it when it came out. Sorry. The interesting thing is that this episode is actually a better adaptation than the Disney cartoon.
Yeah, I remember we listened to this and we're like, this is bad. And then,
we're like, this is such a bad adaptation. They're making up all this stuff.
We actually read, or I can't remember if you did. I definitely did. Yeah. We looked up the summary and we're like, oh, they did better.
Yeah.
Sorry, Odyssey.
We're like, why are they making up all this weird stuff and the order's all weird? And we looked up and we're like, oh, that is how it happened. It was,
our bad.
It was Disney that did it wrong.
Disney done it wrong.
Yeah. By making it more normal and logical. Anyway, sorry.
I'm just gonna basically skip everything. So he does a lot of bad stuff, and he separates from Geppetto for a while, and he eventually gets like gobbled up by a fish. It turns out Geppetto's in there, and then he becomes a good boy, and they escape the fish, and then he gets turned into a real boy. So there are some interesting changes, because like Pilgrim's Progress, this one's like super long. Lots of bits were cut out, and some were put in a different order, but like we said, the order's way more similar than it is with the Disney cartoon.
Yeah.
So and also the changes that the Odyssey one does aren't damaging, because there's like so much stuff, and a lot of it is repetitive. There's 2 different instances that are almost like the exact same thing with like the money tree, except for it happens almost like the same thing happens twice, and I'm like, how did you fall for that a second time, you idiot wooden child?
Because he's an infant. He was literally born yesterday.
I like that line in the Odyssey.
Oh yeah, does he say that?
Okay, he says that. Because he's Jay. You make that joke. I love Jay. Some fun changes which made me really laugh. I'm just gonna shout them out here. So, in the original, so none of these things happen in the Odyssey version. One of the first places he goes is he gets taken by this puppet collector, And so he's there with like other wooden puppets, which I can't remember if they were sentient. I think one of them might have been, but it was like never commented on, either that or it wasn't.
So it's
but I'm
like
like pretty sure there's another guy.
I was gonna say it's like he's just hanging out in like Madame Tussauds. It's like a taxidermied collection of dead compatriots. Except as I thought that, I was like,
but they're alive.
That's also what Geppetto's house is like to him. So
maybe that's why I wanted to leave.
Yeah, I
can't blame him anymore.
I would be kind of perturbed.
So he gets taken there, and he's like the puppet master guy from the Disney version and the episode, kind of. But
Stromboli.
He's kind of like Stromboli, but like he doesn't actually put on puppet shows. He just collects them and lets them sit there, like. I can sell these on eBay later, kind of thing. So he's like, I better not damage them.
One of those people.
Yeah, he's one of those people.
One of those. I have a house full of puppets that I don't have a reason for, kind of people.
You know, like, who we're talking about.
Unfortunately.
And so, Geppetto finds him there, and he's just like, what the heck? Give me back my wood boy. So then he, like, takes him, and then, Pinocchio's a bad kid, because he runs off, like, from Geppetto a bunch of times, and Geppetto keeps on getting him, and then Pinocchio keeps on running away, and it kind of gets to the point where Geppetto's like, okay, come back when you're ready, because you're not gonna come back otherwise.
I mean, once again, I bring it up now.
I would ditch him. He is a bad child. Pinocchio is the worst.
If I was a living puppet and my house was a puppet shop full of non-living puppets, I would probably run away too.
Yeah, but like... Yeah.
I would be like, hey, Geppetto, my dude, do you think maybe you want to try taking up, like, rock sculpting?
Just rock painting. So I'd rather be surrounded by 100 rocks painted like ladybugs than the corpses of my brethren.
Yeah, like knitting, perhaps? Origami?
Have you ever noticed how, like, painted rocks are usually painted as ladybugs? Like,
yes.
That's the most... If you've never seen in real life at least 20 dozen painted ladybug rocks, you are a liar.
Because ladybugs are shaped like rocks.
Not always.
Go on.
Okay, so later, towards the end of the story, this is kind of like the last event that happens. Instead of being taken by like a puppet dude to put him on puppet shows,
it's actually Bro Strider,
and like sing "There Are No Strings on Me" as an homage to everyone's favorite Marvel villain from everyone's favorite Marvel movie, Age of Ultron. So he actually gets taken in by a circus. And no joke, he is not just annoying to us readers and listeners and watchers, he's also annoying to the characters in the book, which honestly is very comforting solidarity. So, like, yeah. So Pinocchio...
Yeah, they have a bigger mood than all of us.
Because they're actually stuck with him. So,
no, because they act on that.
Oh, yeah, yeah. So, Pinocchio is being annoying for literally everyone. And so, once he goes to the circus, he actually gets tied up by his coworkers with rope, and then they throw him into the sea, and it's like, I wish I could do that to Pinocchio. And he gets eaten by not a whale, but a shark. I guess a very big shark, because Geppetto's in there. Turns out, in the time that Geppetto and Pinocchio were separated by him, Geppetto went swimming one day or something, and then, just because his life is the worst, he got eaten by a shark.
It's like...
And not digested.
There's a couple things to address.
And
there's a couple of things we have to unpack this bowl of wax.
Wait, it gets better. So that's not really very well explained. That's like my guess for what happened. First time I read this summary, because it was like a little after I saw Last Jedi and did a bunch of Star Wars movies in a marathon. I read that and I'm like, that's a really big coincidence. And I was like, oh no, wait. it's because of the Force. And then I kept on reading, and I got down like half a paragraph, and I stopped, and I went back up. And I was like, this isn't Star Wars. That's just the world's biggest coincidence.
That's not how the Force works.
And so... Wait, let me finish. So once Pinocchio sees Geppetto, he's like, hey, and they also have like a new aquatic friend in the whale. I can't remember what. It might have been like a fish or a crab or something, or a turtle. Pinocchio, since he's a little jerk.
This story had the most potential ever to become a Disney story because it came built in with multiple animal companions. Like,
and they took like almost all of them out.
I know. It's like Disney was like tearing its hair out. It's like,
there's too many. Okay, so once Pinocchio sees Geppetto, he's like, hey, wouldn't it be funny if, since I'm the worst, we messed with this shark's innards and like lit a fire or like made smoke or something? So he said like, not so we'll get released, but because I'm the worst and I just want to ruin this shark's day. And I'm like, Pinocchio, you are terrible. And then he's also like, oh, I guess we also might get released in the process. He's like, I guess I might get released in the process. And he's like, oh yeah, and you too, Geppetto, I guess. And you too, animal friends. And it's like, oh my gosh. Why did he become a human boy? He's still terrible by the end of the story. So and that's the story.
So let's unpack the little bit from a couple minutes past.
Oh my gosh.
Whales and sharks, despite the fact that whale sharks are a thing that exist.
It's not a whale shark.
Here's something to consider. Whales are mammals. And they breathe air. Yep. There's air inside of a whale. Sharks are not mammals. They're chondrichthyans.
Yep.
They do not breathe air. They're not even actinopterygians. They don't even have an air-filled gas bladder. They have a buoyancy bladder filled with oil, which is also not breathable by humans or sentient wood boys. So...
That sentient wood boy.
I don't really know what's going on here. Secondly, the fact that Geppetto just happens... Oh, it was a
tuna fish that became his friend that was just, like, hanging out in the shark.
I thought you meant he was swallowed by a tuna fish.
No.
I'm like...
Somehow, I would believe that more than the shark.
I was like, tuna are bigger than most people think. Not quite that big. Geppetto being inside of the shark with no explanation, he just shows up and he turns around and Geppetto's just kind of there, leading on to thing.
Darn it.
He's not Genie from Aladdin. It's not like you show up in a place and Geppetto's just there like painting the Mona Lisa.
So I was actually wrong about the fire thing. So I'm gonna read this from bookreports.info, the summary that's there. So blah 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 blah. Pinocchio gets saved by the fairy because, like, he has a rock tied around his neck. Oh, geez. Pinocchio is sold to the circus where they broke his leg, and with a broken leg, he was useless for the circus. They tied a rock around his neck and threw him into the sea.
So, did they break his leg so that he would get fired from the circus, or just because they wanted to break his leg?
I like to think they broke his leg because he's him. Pinocchio was saved thanks to the Blue Fairy.
I like that because I like the idea that he could get fired where they're like, Pinocchio, we're going to have to let you go. Your leg is broken. He's like, my coworkers broke my leg. And they're like, there's nothing we can do. We have to let you go.
For some reason, the security cameras were switched off for the 2 minutes that happened. We can't help you.
We're like, we understand that this
you signed this lease form thing.
Like, we're sorry, this is unfortunate.
Not our fault.
The world's worst HR department is like, this is a very unfortunate happenstance that the coworkers that we could fire instead happen to be the ones who broke your leg, but at least we can offer you this generous severance package, and they hold up a noose with a rock tied around it.
They throw him in the water, and then the coworkers run in and they're like, is it done? And they're like, yeah. Okay, so he was swimming, he got swallowed by a shark. Inside the shark, he found Geppetto and a tuna fish with the help of the tuna fish, he carries his father out of the shark because the shark was sleeping with his mouth wide open.
With the help of the tuna fish, he carries Geppetto?
Yes. I love how, but it says, like, with the help of the tuna fish, he carries his father out of the shark because he was sleeping with his mouth wide open. The first 6 times I read that sentence, because it's like, the pronouns are all so bad, and I assume they're all he's. I thought it was like, Geppetto's mouth was open, so they could carry Geppetto out of the shark, and I was like, what does that mean? So, to be clear, sharks... In the sentence here, she rewarded Pinocchio and turned him into a real flesh and blood boy and killed Geppetto. She's Griffin. She's Griffin McElroy. So am I right now. I don't know if you've noticed in my intonations, but I've listened to like 4 hours today of Mabim Bam. That's what happens to you. You start talking... That's why I never say, like, specific genders anymore. I call literally everyone boy now, and I can't. Before listening to Taz. I'm like, look at that beautiful boy, and it's like a dog or something. And it's happening again. Or like a girl. Now, okay, so that sharks just beg more questions. Sharks sleep underwater. Yeah. With their mouths open. No, they don't really. They swim where they're underwater and they're either swimming forward or they're at the bottom of the water. Well, you clearly don't know anything about sharks. I know everything I know about sharks. It does say that is a .info website, so I can't argue with the internet. It was someone's book report. I can't argue with .info. How can you argue with that? So yeah, that's Odyssey. That's a summary of all of Odyssey. That summates how the episodes compare. Sharks. Yeah. Yep. That's the adaptation. That was number 9, yes, or 8? That was number 7. Okay. What is number 8, Victoria? You tell me. It is An Act of Nobility. Yes, it is, actually. Nice. So this one is The Prisoner of Zenda. And so in this one, I looked at the summary for both the movie and the book, because I didn't know anything about either of them. Yeah, we would not have known that this was an adaptation if not for the fact that we reviewed it in the Year of Wit, and it said in the guide that it was an adaptation of this movie/book that neither of us had ever heard of before. Which is a shame if we didn't know that, because I think this one's one of the more interesting adaptations. Oh yeah, another thing I forgot to say, the reason I'm going from 1 to 17 with this list. Yeah, we probably should have said that before because it's very unconventional for a top 10. This is a weird top 10, but the reason it's from 1 to 17... Also because it's a top 17. The reason it's from 1 to 17 is because the closer an adaptation is, the least stuff you have to say on it. It's less interesting. It gets more interesting as it goes on because there's more differences, so you can talk about more stuff. So, The movie Prisoner of Zenda was based off of the book, but this is more similar to the movie than it is to the book, from what I have seen. So, this one actually starts off with a guy on vacation, and he goes to this place that he's never gone before, called Ruritania. Which is like Mauritania, but rural, I guess. You proud of that? They're all country folk. That's not even a joke. It's like... Merch's Birch. Yep, nailed it in one. Yeah, he's... blow up the band, blow up the earth, and get those best ever diamonds here. Say sure shoot. They're steal my root beer barrels. They're here to steal my root beer barrels. Anyway, stop quoting Cassidy. So, this is a story about a guy named Rudolph, and he goes to this place called Ruritania on vacation so he can go on a fishing trip. And once he's there, all these people are, like, gossiping about him and stuff, and he doesn't know why. And then he meets the prince, and he finds out that the prince looks a lot like him. And he also meets, like, the captain of the guard and a general or whatever he is. The prince gets drugged because they're all drinking wine. The prince leaves, goes on an airplane, crashes. Because wine is a drug, kids, and drugs kill. Well, he doesn't. Actually, the drugs save his life in this. No! So, yeah, everything you know is a lie. In this, the prince is put out of commission, so then Randolph takes over in the place of the prince because they look the same. And then he, like, does all the same things. Like, he gets crowned because the prince can't get crowned, and because of that, in this version, it's the...
Do you know why he can't get crowned?
The prince's brother who's trying to steal the crown.
Drugs.
The prince's brother is trying to steal the crown in this.
I didn't see you there.
Stop! So, yeah, he's the person who's... Yeah. Everything basically plays out the same as in the Odyssey episode with, like, the prince finding out, except for he's not actually upset when the prince finds out. He's like, oh my gosh, you saved my crown, thank you. And, like, thanks for doing that. And then...
Like a normal person.
Yeah, like a normal person would. Let me just make sure I'm not wrong about that, because that would be embarrassing.
What if Michael Douglas told, like, Fitz von Lederhosen...
His name isn't Michael Douglas. Douglas is the name of his actor.
What if Michael Douglas told, like, Fitz von Lederhosen to, like, drug the wine, but then he just put, like, weed in his wine?
Stop.
And then he was just flying.
I can't focus on anything you're saying, because I can't remember anyone's name.
That's good.
Okay, whatever. Let's just say I'm right. So everything plays out the same. The bad guys are stopped, the good guys win. But the thing is, the reason why this is further down on the list, even though it sounds really similar, is because a huge part of the plot is this romance between Randolph and the mistress of the brother.
Nice.
So they, like, fall
I thought that was
stuff.
her title, like the mistress of the lagoon or something.
Yeah,
I was like, oh, that's cool.
It's like that one Avatar episode.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's
the Lady of the Lake. He was sleeping with Morgan Le Fay.
No, that's not. No, she's like someone else. He was just trying to seduce her to distract her or something like that.
That's one does.
So there's this lady named Antoinette, and she's the lady of the court, and Rupert meets her while he's pretending to be the
court
prince.
And mistress of the night.
There are two different characters.
That's her vigilante persona.
Have you ever noticed when we re-record episodes, we're always, like, so off track?
I have noticed that, in fact.
Like, even with, like, Soaplessly Devoted.
Yeah,
Like, we got off on, like, now Wit is a fan of soap operas.
See, the great thing about her having, like, a vigilante persona is that Rudolph also has, like, these two versions of himself, except she assumes, like, oh, he has, like, his secret pauper version, who's his vigilante version. She doesn't realize he's actually...
It's Prince and the Pauper, just like I did, and she finds out it's actually an adaptation of a different source material.
She has her, like, superhero life and her real life, and she's kind of, like, flirting with Rudolph and with the other one, and she assumes that they're the same person, that they're both, like, wink,
There's only
wink.
one guy out at all times.
What? No, there's the guy who looks like Rudolph.
Yeah, that's the prince.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so
and
she's,
the prince
like,
is
flirting...
on commission the entire time she has a relationship with Rudolph.
She's flirting with the prince, she's flirting with him, and she
No,
assumes they're the same
no,
person.
that's
It's
not
like this
what's happening.
wink thing, and she doesn't realize they're actually different people.
No, because the entire time Rudolph is pretending to be the prince.
That's such a good, like...
The prince is, like, unconscious.
That's such
and,
a good
like,
reversal of, like,
stuff.
the superhero trope and stuff.
Quiet.
I love it.
Quiet. You can write that if you want. So she falls in...
That's
Quiet.
such a good miraculous fic where it
Stop.
turns out, like, Adrian and Shatner aren't actually the same person. Except Marinette thinks they are.
That would be funny.
I guess that works for, like, the, like, Bridget verse and stuff.
Yeah.
Felix. Anyways,
that is
on.
actually the plot of a lot of those things. So Antoinette and Rupert are in love and stuff, but after the prince gets better, Rupert has to leave so everyone doesn't figure out the switch they pulled, and because of that, Antoinette and Rudolph can never be together. So it kind of ends on a bittersweet note. It says, like, blah, 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 blah. Oh, Rassendil is the name of the James Armour character. I guess Rupert is actually Rudolph. Oh my gosh, Devin. This guy named Rassendil is the guy who went on the fishing trip and then became king temporarily. Rudolph is the guy who is the prince. I got all the names wrong. And Flavia is the name of the lady. She has like 6 different personality names, things.
And she's dating every character as a different one of them.
Okay.
She's actually Janet Van Dyne is one of hers, so and that's why she got married to Michael Douglas.
Bittersweet ending. I would say the ending of an Act of Nobility is pretty bittersweet. Because it's kind of like, oh, he never got the recognition, but he's like, oh, blah, 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 blah. And Isaac's just like, man,
that's what you mean.
Wit, I wish you were as cool as that James Armour guy. You're just a loser.
And then Wit's like, yeah, I guess so. And Wit picks up a throwing hatchet and like hurls it across Wit's end, and it like splits a hair in half on the wall.
He throws it out the window at Wit's end, and it goes all the way to the Riley farm and lands in that tree. That's from Angels in the Horsehair.
The same tree.
The same tree. It's still there to that day.
When Wit in Angels and Horsehair, when Wit threw the axe into the tree, he actually split that axe in half like Robin Hood.
And that kid was just like, holy crap, you're so cool.
The axe head got
but his eyes were also closed when he threw that. Do you remember?
Yes. Of course I remember. Gosh. Victoria, I fall asleep every night thinking about it.
My nightmares are about that moment. Okay.
When I die, my maiden powers will go to Wit because that's what I will be thinking about on my deathbed.
Okay, so this one's pretty good, but it does miss that entire like romance subplot, which again like is a lot of it. And he's also there for like different reasons. James Armour, all the names are different. James Armour, who is Wit, like he's Wit. Let's all just admit it.
Yes, we did it in the year of Wit because this is Wit's like this is his.
There's some people who are like,
real life.
I still don't think this is Wit, and I'm like, I didn't ask your opinion. It is. So yeah, I don't really have that much to say. James Armour, Wit, is there to work on his book. The other guy's there just to go on vacation, which. Honestly, if Wit was there just to go fishing, this all would have happened anyway. Because whenever he goes fishing, an all-out, like, riot breaks out between 2 different clans. And then he has to buy a map for, a nickel or, like, a penny. And
my first thought was ice fishing.
That too. But my example was more elaborate and a 2-parter.
Yeah.
So I win.
What?
No, it wasn't a 2-parter.
It is definitely not.
Never mind. They didn't have enough stuff for a 2-parter. Well, actually...
I would not have been able to deal with those accents for 2 episodes.
Oh, I forgot about the accents. That mom is like Cassidy, actually. But voiced by a lady. Do you remember what the next one is? This one's kind of a weird one.
Is this 9 and 10 now?
This one's 9.
Oh, yeah, because 10 was 2. Oh, yeah.
Spoilers.
9.
This one's a weird one. This one's like kind of...
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Terror from the Skies.
Yeah, /
War of the Worlds.
Yeah. So I have read...
the broadcast of War of the Worlds.
Yeah, I'm about to get to that. So, I actually did read War of the Worlds for a course I did last semester on Gothic literature.
Because Victoria's read, like, every old book, which is why she's doing this episode.
I have not. There are many people who are my age who have read a lot more old books than I have.
And there are many people who've lived their entire lives and read many less old books than you have.
That is true. Like you.
Yeah.
You're older than me.
Yes, I've lived my entire life, and I will go die immediately after this episode.
We'll be dead in 15 minutes. We're not going to
That's a joke. This episode's not going to be done in 15 minutes.
That's what I was going to say. Okay, so this one I almost took off the list and wasn't going to count it, but then I realized it still ranks higher than everyone else despite the technicalities. So with War of the Worlds, which is a book by H.G. Wells about an alien invasion.
It was not Orson Welles, contrary to popular belief.
Yeah. So the thing
I was confused about that for a while. I was like, how is he still a voice actor in things if he wrote War of the Worlds?
He's very old. So War of the Worlds was a book written by H.G. Wells in the 19th century. And it is about aliens from Mars. They coming to Earth because Mars is going to be destroyed very soon, just because like it's kind of unbalanced and like energy and stuff, and
I didn't know that.
it's gonna be destroyed like just on its own
Just
because
like
it's bad living conditions. So that's why they come to Earth. So they're gonna like colonize Earth and make it their
is it
new
like
home
falling
planet.
into the sun or something, or
No, it's just like dying basically.
what does that mean? What could go wrong with Mars
think
that
it
would
was,
not
like,
affect
Gonna
Earth?
heat
which
explode.
Oh, heat explode, of course. I hate it when planets heat explode, especially when they're planets farther from the sun than Earth is.
I mean, that was like a very popular theory in the Victorian era.
That doesn't mean I can't laugh at it.
Mars was going to like be destroyed one day, and then anyone who lives on Mars would have to come to Earth. And then like, what would happen? Would they be friendly? Would they not be friendly? There are a lot of different works that were based off of this one, and this was the most popular of them. And this was also, I believe, the most hostile.
A lot of people concerned about how are
them.
we going to migrate all of the Mars people.
They have like Victorian era style TED Talks on educating people about aliens and like what to do and stuff. I'm not making this up.
No, I'm sure you aren't. That's why I'm laughing.
They have like pamphlets and stuff to like help you.
Except to help you as in help the Martians. These were pamphlets aimed at the Martians, and they would just throw.
No, they're aimed at people. They're supposed to be educational.
Martian immigration about you.
About all the 0 things they knew about
what
Martians.
To expect when you're expecting a Martian invasion.
So, years later, once War of the Worlds, I guess, was out of the popular scene, kind of. Like, it was still a famous book.
It's no longer on the New York bestselling list.
It was still a really famous book, but it was more like a little bit not as general knowledge-y between everyone. So this group of very well-meaning people that I feel so bad for, might I add.
I mean, they went down in history. It's been like 100 years and we still remember what they did.
Anyway, it hasn't been that long.
I know. It's been like 80 years.
So they decided to do a radio broadcast of War of the Worlds. And lots of people thought it was real, even though they very clearly said it was not at the very beginning. And then they got worried that like they were gonna die and stuff like that. And then they called into the radio station.
Yeah, so here's the problem.
It was like
crazy. As with the Odyssey episode, the problem with putting a warning at the beginning of the episode is that people can tune in at any point.
Yeah. So, that's why this almost.
You also can't put a like on TV. At least you could put like, you know, like a TVY7 or whatever in the corner so people know that it's fictional. But the radio equivalent of that would have to be someone constantly whispering really quietly. This is fake. This is fake. This is fake.
They actually hire people to sneak into your house and whisper it like behind you.
Yeah, it's considered less intrusive, although the budget does kick up considerably.
So that's the reason why I almost didn't make the list, because Terror of the Skies is more an adaptation of the event than the actual book. But the thing is, the scenes where they are reenacting the radio drama by actually doing scenes from the book are very well done. Like, the most notable one is the scene where the alien pod lands and then the person outside of it gets attacked. That isn't a reporter in the book. It's just like a guy, and he gets got by their heat guns and like melted. And then there's like this whole pile of people though in the book. But the interaction was very similar between the alien and the person. It was basically word for word in that scene. I was actually really impressed.
Also, this is technically a double adaptation.
It is
so
a double
I feel like there should be some bonus points in there. Granted, there's lots of things in here that I guess when you think about it are double adaptations, because like Wizard of Oz and,
it has the element
like Zelda and stuff are all movies based on books.
It's not like there were actually a Jimmy and Lawrence in this. So anyway, there's like mass death in the book. Like they had piles of dead bodies that were like basically melted. It was actually really gruesome. I was surprised that like it never got censored or anything. I even asked my teacher about that. Apparently it didn't have any censorship issues, and I was very surprised about that.
It was the 30s. People were just used to that.
Because, like, if a woman has sex before she gets married in the Victorian century and her character isn't murdered, there
Are you talking about
riots
censorship of the book or the radio?
of the book.
Oh,
But yet they
that
have
makes a
piles
lot
of
more
dead
sense.
bodies upon dead bodies and all
Victoria,
this death.
if you should know this from media,
that's
gore,
never addressed. Even though, no, the thing is, they do address gore in other books, and they, like, deliberately try to avoid gore, but in this book, it just came, like, I don't know, like, a little bit later than all the other ones, and there still were, like, harsh censorship rules, but it never got, and I, like, yeah, I find that surprising still, despite... It
slipped through the cracks, because
no,
it
it didn't.
Greased.
They knew, and they're like, okay, we'll give you a pass.
Well, yeah, that's how it slipped through the cracks. It was greased with all of the melted people.
Ew. Okay, so, in the Odyssey episode, it cuts between the radio broadcast that Edwin's putting on and Jimmy and Lawrence hearing the radio broadcast and, like, being worried that they're in danger, and Lawrence's mom is in danger, who is, like, at an event that the aliens are gradually getting closer to.
The Silver Wind Restaurant.
So it's, like, a pretty good adaptation, but it's, like, a weird adaptation and stuff, and also everything with Jimmy and Lawrence, like,
yeah,
didn't
it almost makes the disqualifying factor of things that are on this list where we didn't count, like, adaptations of historical events and Bible stories, because those are, like, real things.
This one, it's, like, half an adaptation. It's weird. It's
an adaptation of a historical event that was adapting a fictional story.
It's still, just, like, on the sole fictional bits of it, it's, like, with the book, it still did a better job than these next things.
It's art imitating life, imitating art. Yeah.
So, do you remember what number 10 is? Number 10 is kind of tricky because I thought about these two. I thought about these two for a really long time, and it actually really bothered me, and I didn't want to do this. It actually made me really mad. But I couldn't decide between them, so it's a tie for number 10. Do you remember what they are?
I don't. I really don't. My Fair Bernard?
Nope.
And nope. Oh, there's so many more. Taking. I was gonna say no. Surely it's not a Thankstaking story. That would be a ridiculous answer.
It is a Thankstaking story, and
Monte, Romeo, and Merchant of Venice.
Yes.
Nice.
So it is a Thankstaking story, which is primarily because it has so much going on in that episode. We're looking at the Grinch that stole Christmas aspect of it. And then the Merchant...
Because that's the more of the main plot, which is, granted, is kind of like, it's pretty... It's pretty general, but if you listen to it, you can point out that is being, like, the biggest plot. Most of the things are references, and that's the more of the plot thing, especially since the main character of the story is the Scrunch.
Yeah. So, and the other one that's tied for the 10 slot is The Merchant of Odyssey, which is an adaptation of Shakespeare's Merchant of Venice.
Obviously, because
so,
it's in the episode.
Something that I've learned about adaptations over the years that's interesting, in my opinion, is that even if something, like, is a really good adaptation, like, in my opinion, I think the Hunger Games movies are the best movie series adaptations where I've read the books to match them.
You mean the best story that is an adaptation?
Yeah. So, even though I think that one's my favorite personally, since the books are narrated by Katniss in first-person point of view, all the scenes in the movie where we get things from, like, Snow or Seneca or someone else, like Peeta's point of view, and Katniss isn't there, that means it wasn't in the book, and therefore that scene is inaccurate adaptation-wise, regardless or not of whether Colleen Hoover, is that?
That doesn't sound right.
Suzanne Collins.
Yes.
That's it. Colleen Hoover's a different writer. Sorry. Regardless or not of whether Suzanne Collins wrote the screenplay for the first movie, which she did. I don't know if you knew that.
I did not.
So
you're saying it's an inaccurate adaptation,
so it's
but that does not
inaccurate.
That doesn't make it a bad story.
That's true. So what I'm saying is, if you have an adaptation, but you take a lot of things out of it, it is technically inaccurate. If you have an adaptation, but you put a lot of stuff in it, like the Hobbit movies, for example, that is inaccurate.
It is inaccurate.
So I love the Hobbit movies. I'm one of the few people that actually likes
they
those
are
movies
very different to the book.
I don't like Tolkien's writing style, and I don't like his books very
That's fair.
much. I've read 2 of his books. One was The Hobbit, one was The Silmarillion, and both I did not enjoy reading.
What a good second Tolkien book to read.
I know, it was for school. Leave me alone.
Don't you just love reading dictionaries?
No! I listened to the audiobook and it was still painful.
It's like reading a textbook.
It was. I was like not paying attention the entire time, and every moment I was, it was like my brain was melting. It was like that scene from Indiana Jones where his face melts off. Anyway, so with Thankstaking story, we have a adaptation case of adding and changing too much, with all the different other holiday characters being thrown in and jokes from other holiday things. And then them just changing everything, so it's about, again, Thanksgiving and not Christmas. And with Merchant of Odyssey, they take a lot of stuff out, because with Merchant of Odyssey, I'm just going to be looking at the bit with, not the bit where they're actually reading the scripts for the Merchant of Venice, but the bits with Edwin and Bart, like, and Edwin losing money, and the IRS, and all that jazz. So, I don't really have much to say on the Thankstaking story. Do you?
Portia's kind of the IRS in this, sort of. I mean, I know she's also like Jason or whatever, but like the money is needed to give to the IRS. No,
do you have something to say about a Thankstaking story?
There's some clever reference uses in there.
How dare you call Portia the IRS? She is my best friend. She is my fictional best friend.
But
I want to be best friends with her.
It's like the plot connection to the Grinch is pretty weak, because he doesn't basically he just bans their holiday. He doesn't like sneak into their homes and steal their turkeys, as far as I can recall. I mean,
but
he doesn't even. He's not even the one.
They do have a Cindy Lou Who character, and they do like sing and stuff.
Yeah,
like that.
He also doesn't technically make the holiday illegal. It's Burgermeister Meisterburger who does
verse, like Dr. Seuss writes.
Yes.
And several other things. But the far more interesting one to talk about is the Merchant of Venice / Odyssey.
Yeah. So,
okay,
but so is the IRS the church then? Because who's taking the money that is needed from this loan? It's because he needs the money to get married to Portia, right?
Yeah, it's just like general money to like.
Just like a dowry. The IRS is Portia's father.
I think it's like a dowry and just wedding expenses.
Yeah, so the church.
Just like a bunch of different.
It's a bunch of wedding retailers.
It's also like
it's a bunch of wedding retailers. It's the baker and the
whole
florist,
bunch of other stuff.
The florist, and
literally
the
everything. Weddings are expensive.
The IRS.
That's why whenever you get married, you never tell them it's something for a wedding. You just buy it, because otherwise they'll charge you more.
The IRS is a scam.
Okay, so Merchant of Odyssey. How about you summarize this one?
Okay.
And then I will summarize the Merchant of Venice.
Oh, well, we do it the other way around.
No.
Right? Because you want to talk about the story that came first, and then you talk about how they adapted it.
Fine. But you have to summarize Merchant of Odyssey, because my throat is starting to hurt.
That's okay.
Touch me. Norma Desmond.
Oh yeah, that's on the list.
Yep. So it's the last thing. So anyone who knows what Norma
Yeah,
Desmond
you
is
spoiled
been
it.
spoiled.
You spoiled what spot on the list it is.
No
so
one's gonna understand that reference, but like maybe one person.
I'll
if
get
you
it
did,
right.
I'm impressed.
No. Talk about it,
Watch,
Victoria.
you won't get it right still.
No, I'm gonna forget.
Okay, so in The Merchant of Venice, there I have the names pulled up. So
And of
I
course,
won't forget
they
their
talk about,
names.
they summarize the play in the episode.
Yeah. So there's this guy named Antonio, and he wants to get married, but he doesn't have the money for it. So he asks his
Friend.
Sorry, there's like pop-ups. He asks a couple people, and they're all like, we don't really have the money either. How about you ask your best friend Bassanio? So then he does, and Bassanio doesn't really have the money either, but he's like, Antonio, you're my dude. I'm gonna get you this money one way or another. So he goes to this merchant named Shylock, and then he takes a loan from him, but he doesn't have the money to pay him back, but he will when his ships come sailing in with all his merch and stuff
on Christmas Day.
And this was a time period where if your ships sink, you're doomed, basically, because that's where all your money
today
is.
Also, probably.
That's also like the reason why Belle and her father and their entire family were poor in Beauty and the Beast, because they actually start out rich at the beginning of that story. And he was a merchant, and then they lose all their money because his ship sink. Anyway, so
we do that.
Portia and Antonio are gonna get married, but they don't yet.
Of love.
They don't get married yet. That's the thing. So Portia doesn't want to get married because she has all these different suitors, and she's like, I don't want to get married yet. Except for she actually does kind of like Antonio, so she's thinking about it a little bit.
It's a pretty lukewarm response for Bassanio to put his flesh on the line for.
I don't think he knows Portia really. I'm not sure. But I want Portia to be one of my new best friends, and I want her to be my big sister. She's
Bassanio
so cool.
Is a solid friend.
He is.
He's
like, what do you need? Do you need blood? Do you need skin? Do you need a kidney? I will give you a heart donation.
Too bad I've already promised it away. It's already been Rumpelstiltskined off to Shylock.
But for you, though. Anyway, so Bassanio's ships sank. It's bad game of Battleship, and he's losing. And then Shylock comes in, he's like, hey, you didn't pay me, so I'm gonna take a pound of your skin.
Of your flesh, there's a difference.
Oh, I never really thought about.
Did you think he just skinned him?
I did.
That would be a third of the skin on your body, a pound of flesh.
Yeah, that's why I always thought it was horrifying.
No, you just cut off a chunk.
Well, actually, you know what he wanted to take?
2 pounds of flesh.
No, you know what the specific pound was that he wanted to take?
Oh.
He wanted to take his heart.
Oh.
What did you think I was going to say?
Different.
Yeah, okay.
Which would not weigh a pound.
Anyway, so... Oh. No!
Well, you weren't saying it. You were saying it like a wink-wink kind of thing.
Yeah, I was saying his heart, so he kills him.
Okay.
Jeez.
That's why you kept on talking about how he wanted to kill him, and I was like, no, he's just going to take a pound of flesh.
No, he's going to take his heart.
I get it now.
Yeah. Okay. So, so he whisks, what's his face?
I mean,
Bassanio away.
I wouldn't normally refer to the heart as flesh, really. I mean,
too bad.
It is, flesh is muscle tissue, but I would really
Your heart's a muscle.
Yeah, I know, that's what I'm saying, but I would really only call, skeletal muscle flesh, not cardiac or smooth muscle.
Too bad.
Usually.
Shylock doesn't care, Devin. He's angry. So, Shylock is gonna murder Bassanio, but, and then Antonio and Antonio's 2 friends are like, we haven't seen Bassanio in a while, and then they somehow, I'm not really sure how, find out, or at least guess that, Bassanio's in a lot of trouble. So then they, go to, where he is, because apparently they know where that is, to, help him. And then Portia also finds out somehow. I'm guessing Antonio tells her. So, it's Emperor's New Groove, and she's Kronk, gets there before them. And she is the best. She cross-dresses, and she pretends to be a lawyer. So then Shylock is about to kill Bassanio, and then Portia appears, and she's just like, oh, you gotta put him on trial. And Shylock's like, I want to kill him. She's like, nope, just put him on trial. So then he gets put on trial, and then she is amazing. So she's pretty much like, so, I might be a simple, non-cross-dressing, humble person, but...
Who's also a real lawyer.
But, Mr. Shylock, if I ask you, are you a Christian? And then...
I say.
And then I'm trying to do the bad accent Aaron does whenever they have to do the...
Yes, the good old
game from
the good old Venetian foghorn leghorn.
Yeah. That one judge game on the spot.
Yeah.
So, then Shylock's like, of course I'm a Christian. It's like Shakespearean times, everyone is. So then she's just like, do you think it's very Christian to, like, take someone's flesh? And he's just like, And everyone in the audience is like, oh.
It's furiously flipping through Leviticus.
And then, he's like, but I need to get paid back somehow. And she's like, then we'll just give you money. Calm down for like 2 minutes. So
and he's like...
So then they have to pay him like basically a fortune in gold, but they all like amass enough money somehow. And then they like give it to him, and then...
They also could have just like killed Shylock, I'm just saying.
Probably, but they didn't want to. Portia's like, we can resolve this peacefully. She's the best. So Portia like takes off her wig, and they're like, who's that man who's your amazing lawyer? And she's like, I am no man. So many Lord of the Rings mentions in this. More than There and Back Again, which is like a Lord of the Rings episode of Odyssey. So, yeah, and then her and Antonio, like, hook up and stuff, and everything is happily ever after, and I'm like, Portia, adopt me, you're so cool. Odyssey episode.
Yeah, so, in a similar vein, we have Edwin, who is now taking control of the Electric Palace, because of Album 26, and he was, bequeathed it.
Also, I just want to say, as a kid, until I read this summary, like, last week, I always assumed that Bassanio got, like, super killed. Like, killed
I didn't really think about
so
what happened
many
after it,
times.
honestly.
They make it sound like he dies in the Odyssey version.
Bart is not very happy that Edwin controls his shop. And so Bart, who is still managing the Electric Palace, is hiding all of these notices from the IRS about the need to pay his inheritance tax for the shop. And so the IRS visits Edwin, and they're like, hey, you owe us $5,000. And Edwin's like, I don't have $5,000.
With his chocolatey butter melting on your face.
Yeah, and no one has any money to lend him in all of Odyssey.
Wait, let me say, he first asks Jason, and then he asks Jack.
There was literally no better options in the entire town of Odyssey, apparently, than Bart Rathbone from whom to lend money. Also, Bassanio apparently had no better options from whom to lend money in all of Venice than Shylock.
Crazy merchant guy.
Shylock, a name which has literally since become a word that means shyster. So Bart's like, I'll lend you the money.
In 15 minutes.
Yeah, if you don't pay me back in 15 minutes, then I'll kill you. And
he does not say that.
You'll have to give me You'll have to give me the Electric Palace and the Harlequin Theater.
He's not gonna murder him,
and
though.
Edwin's like, well, my production of The Merchant of Venice, in which I play Shylock, and so I probably should have seen this coming, is gonna happen before those 6 weeks are up, and so sure, give me the money, and then Bart sabotages him.
Have you ever thought about the fact that, like, no one ever goes to see a show, so he wouldn't have made the money anyway?
Yes.
I've thought about that.
Yeah, I'm like, how does he make this money? Especially because he does all these plays, but it's always a one-man show. So, like, what does that even look like?
Yeah. Actually, now that I'm taking a Shakespeare course in school, I actually kind of want to go back through all of Edwin's episodes and just listen to, like, them talking about the different Shakespeare stuff. Because I'll be like, I understand that now.
Othello. Someone dies in that, right?
Oh my gosh, I was reading Othello the other day, and there was this bit where Iago and Cassio and
So is it the Duncan Banquo story?
There wasn't a Duncan and there was no Banquo. But there's like Othello and Cassio.
I think it's Macbeth.
And Iago, and Othello thought that like Cassio was hooking up with his wife, so then they were like gonna jump him and kill him. Oh wait, no, it was Iago and this other random guy. So then the other random guy like tries to like punch Cassio, and then he tries to stab Cassio, and Cassio punches him, and Iago goes behind the guy and like stabs him in the leg, and the guy falls over, and then everyone runs in, and they're like, what happened? And then Iago's just like, my goodness. And he points at, like, Rodergio, the guy who got knocked out by Cassio right away. And he's like, that man just stabbed Cassio, and the others ran away. And Othello's like, good find, Iago. And he's like, thank you. And I was laughing so hard.
I like in Brooklyn Nine-Nine when Amy betrays Jake, and Jake's like, I can't believe you,
that the entire time.
Yeah, and she's like, I'm surprised you've read Othello. And
Othello, I was talking about the bird from Aladdin. And then there's this other great bit at the
we
end.
did Victoria.
Wait, Othello was about to kill himself, and he's just like, but I've been like a pretty good person, right? I'm like, you just murdered your wife while she was screaming at you and struggling to like kill her like 2 minutes ago, and he's just like, I did good, and he stabs himself. I thought of like that thing from, I don't know what it is, The Office maybe, where it's just like, I've never done anything
That's
wrong.
What I was saying.
And he's like,
That's literally what I was saying from Parks and Rec. Mona Lisa is exactly what I was saying. She's like, I've never done anything wrong in my life ever. I know this, and I love you.
I was just like watching. I was like, "What the?"
That guy, that's Henry Winkler from the show with Bill Shatner, is the dad in that gift set.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's what I know him from.
Is that the naked guy?
No, he's the Fonz.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I always forget who's who.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Okay, back to the Merchant of Venice.
So like through my mouth.
So Bart.
Math.
So there's a difference there. Is that as far as I'm aware, Shylock did not actually actively sink the ships of Bassanio, which, to be fair, why would he? He would rather, I'm sure, get the money back than he would just
he was like really happy at the end. It was like a happy ending.
So, Bart intentionally sabotages the play by breaking Edwin's leg, Pinocchio style.
I love how that's a thing we can say now.
He snapped him like a twig.
When your coworker breaks your leg, Pinocchio
just
style.
just Pinocchio things.tumblr.com.
Because they don't like you. .info.
Yeah. .tumblr.info. A URL which will never be used. And then they put on a little 1-person, 3-person show of Merchant of Venice with Bart to show him the story and show him the error of his ways and scare him into thinking Edwin is actually going to slit his throat. And then he's like, okay, maybe I'll give you a little more time on the money.
Please don't kill me.
Because Jack frightens me. Also probably because, come to think of it.
Were you saying Jack you mean Edwin frightens me?
No. But come to think of it, do you think in that moment Edwin reminded him of Regis? And that probably scared a little bit into him.
Of that. Oh my gosh.
I just had a think thought right now.
That's my new favorite think thought headcanon.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
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 That's actually really good.
That is. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
So yeah, he scares him straight, and he's like, "Yeah, okay, you can do it." And I'm sorry that I legitimately sabotaged you without even trying to hide it. Basically,
So due to like the different patterns with how the money was asked for by Edwin, I concluded that Bassanio is Edwin, right? No, yeah. Bassanio's Edwin, and he's Antonio, and then what?
Edwin is Bassanio.
Edwin is Bassanio, Antonio is Jack, and Jason is Portia. So if this were truly an accurate adaptation, it would have gotten number 1 on the list.
Yeah, but more
if
accurately,
Portia and if Jack and Jason got married.
It's probably more the other way around, right? Because who is the one? Jack is the one who like helps get him off the hook.
Yeah, I realized that after.
So Jack is Portia.
Yeah. So, yeah, Jack and Jason, if they got married, this would have been number 1 on the adaptation.
I mean, honestly, any of the adaptations on this list could have bumped themselves to number 1 if they'd included a Jack-Jason wedding. So, let's not
remember
paint
when
fine
Jack
lines.
and Jason got married in A Christmas Carol?
Let's not paint fine lines here.
Okay. So another one
split hairs.
that regardless of whatever character is getting married would not have made number 1 is what, Devin?
Is the next one. So number 11, I'm assuming, is BTV-Revenge in the Count of Monte Cristo.
So yep. So for this part I put definite no's ranked in my notes, and then underneath that I put, can you truly rank awfulness? Well, I don't know, but I did it anyways.
You're truly the greatest among us.
I know!
A pioneer.
So, Count of Monte Cristo, BTV Revenge. If you want a in-depth one, it will be in the description, because I talked about that for quite a while.
At length.
In the review we did of it.
Yes.
So, Devin can even put a timestamp so he has to hunt that down. Ha ha ha.
It's already...
Actually, it's pretty much the entire review.
Also, I already put the timestamp in the description so people could skip your rant. Remember?
That's mean.
You gave me permission to do it multiple times.
Oh, right, I did.
Yes.
But they don't know that. Anyway, so, I'm just gonna give it, like, a really short one. So, Count of Monte Cristo is in the BTV Revenge episode. It's about this one guy who has a great life and is about to get married and all these other things, and then this other guy's jealous, and so he gets Edmund thrown in jail. Edmund comes back and he wants revenge, and they left out, like I said before in the in-depth review, this has like pretty much as many characters and plot threads as Les Mis by Victor Hugo. And that book is crazy.
Oh, that Les Mis.
Oh, that Les Mis. Quiet. And, so they, as you can surmise, since they only had like 4 characters in this, and when they changed the gender and like political status and ethnicity and stuff of pretty much, they changed all their relationships, especially, like, the main core romantic one. And they changed all the characters and left all the characters out, and everything
And
is
they specifically
different.
point out how much they gutted from the story.
Those jokes are actually really funny still. We're just like, let me just skip 100 pages. We didn't miss anything concerning this one plot thread, because they were all just talking about bank statements.
It's like Les Mis, except with Les Mis at sewers.
Yeah, that's that one. But they still kept enough, like, Mondigo and Edmund and Mercedes and the romance
all these car ladies
between Mercedes and Edmund and the prison, even though they changed the name. Don't say what the name is. I don't remember, and I don't want to. Stop thinking about it. I can tell you.
It's the big diff.
Yeah, but they changed it. And they also have the revenge thing, and him becoming rich because of a fortune, and him escaping jail, but not in the way in the episode, because that was so stupid. Anyway, next one. The thing
Could
is...
you imagine if, like, Shawshank Redemption was just like, oh, a volcano exploded underneath the
Oh, I
camp.
forgot how he escaped. He reminded me.
And then and then, like, Mr. Shawshank survives by, like, holding on to a piece of French toast in the ocean.
He doesn't even get rich in this version, in the Odyssey version.
Yeah, he does.
No, he doesn't.
He gets all famous because of his ham and
Yeah, but he doesn't
French
find
toast.
a fortune. He, like, makes it.
Yeah.
Yeah, he finds one in the book.
No.
He finds he has a map to treasure.
Yeah. On the
that he
island
follows on
of Monte
the island of
Cristo.
Monte Cristo.
Yes.
That his old jailmate friend gave him.
Yeah.
So this one actually would have made the list if it weren't for a couple ones just being like a little bit closer to the source material.
As lists tend to be.
Next one, there are two kind of Groundhog Day episodes in Odyssey, but we're going to be looking at Groundhog Jay. I will mention the Eternal Birthday quickly. So in Groundhog Day, we have Bill Murray, and there's this Groundhog Day event, and he's a jerk, and he doesn't want to go to it.
Because who would? Honestly. You go watch a gopher come out of a hole and then, like, go back in a hole, maybe.
It's a big deal where he lives, okay?
Does he live in, like, Puxatawny, Philadelphia, or
He
whatever,
lives in the place where, like, the gopher is.
Okay, but still.
The groundhog is.
Still.
There's, like, news reports. And like, the lady he falls in love with is a news reporter, I'm pretty sure. He's, like, the one reporting
I don't care if I live in Pennsylvania. I am not getting out of bed in the first week of February in Pennsylvania to brave that weather just so I can go watch a rodent decide whether or not it's scared of its own shadow.
You know what, Devin? We're all doomed because of you. And this episode's never gonna go out because you're gonna loop.
No!
Next time you guys see Devin, guys, in an episode, he'll be like 100 years older, but no one will be able to tell, and he'll have lost even more mental stability than he has right now.
Ha! Yeah, right.
Okay, so in the movie, which I haven't seen, I really need to though. I actually really want to watch it. I don't know why I haven't. Like, it seems like a movie I would have seen.
Is it an Alfred Hitchcock film?
No.
I thought it was.
Why?
I don't know, because I thought it was.
It might be a Columbus film.
Okay, go on.
You know, Alfred Hitchcock was like mostly black and white and only a few color movies, right? Like, he made Psycho, which came out in 1960.
Victoria, please.
Okay.
This episode is already, like, way longer than the original.
So in Groundhog Day, Bill Murray causes all these difficulties, but then, so, like, the day repeats for, like, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. He learns all these different things, like sculpting abilities and French and a bunch of other languages. Like, so much time passes until he's, like, completely talented and fluent and everything. He can build, like, this giant ice sculpture in a day, and he can coherently speak French to everyone. He goes insane very fast after the loops repeat enough times. And then he kind of starts playing a game of how many different ways can I kill myself because I hate this. And then he's like, oh, maybe there's a reason. I gotta, like, fix problems. So then he starts trying to, like, make everyone's day good that he ran into. He also saves, like, this homeless guy from dying. And then, like, that still doesn't fix anything. So then instead, he, like, goes to the Groundhog Day event and has fun. And then that was it. So like, saving the homeless guy, I guess
it's like,
that wasn't the good thing you had to do.
What a terrible motto. Moral is the word I was looking for. I almost said
Instead
mortal.
of working on our MCU marathon, do you want to just watch Groundhog Day tonight?
No.
If I have enough time, I might try and watch Groundhog Day this week. I might watch it.
I mean, it's like, okay, so is it ever made clear why, like, what is the mechanism of this curse under which he is placed?
Yeah, I think there's a witch, actually.
There is a witch?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Okay, because
I could be wrong.
I was hoping that it was, like, the groundhog, and that, like, when he finally shows up at the Groundhog Day ceremony at the end, like all Beauty and the Beast, like that the groundhog comes out of its hole and it looks at Bill Murray, but it's like a Jim Henson-esque Yoda puppet, and it's like, you have learned to truly love Bill Murray, and now I release you from this enchantment.
If there is, then it's not actually... Actually, I think that's like a theory. No, wait. I think it's a theory.
Okay, there's a theoretical witch.
Yeah.
So it could be the groundhog is some kind of arcane wizard who primarily specializes in weather magic, which is why everyone looks to them as an omen. Wizard Phil.
I'm going to try and watch Groundhog Day before we do the next review, and I'll be able to give an answer on that. So,
an answer on whether Punxsutawney Phil is actually an ancient weather mage.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, we picked Groundhog Jay over Eternal Birthday because although Eternal Birthday does have, like, the quickly going insane because of the loops element, it doesn't have there's a problem and you need to resolve it kind of thing going on, which...
It's literally happening for the purpose of driving the protagonist crazy in this case.
Thanks, Wit! So, Groundhog Day doesn't have going insane because, like, Priscilla's there and she would put a stop to that. But it does have the problem-solving aspect. So, that is why that's there. Yeah. Basically.
You go through the cycles and you learn more and more and like interact with the different people and make different choices until you put the whole puzzle together. And then it turns out it didn't matter anyways and you just had to go watch a rodent.
Every single time, except for I guess Groundhog Jay, that like I see a Groundhog Day formula story, there's always that one day where the protagonist does everything absolutely wrong because they're just super angry. So then they just do everything bad. And every single time I watch it, I always say, like what if that was the last loop?
Yeah.
Because that would be super
That's what
bad.
I kept on thinking during the 11th hour.
I just love the loop where Taco gets mad because of a pun one of them made and then, like, kills both of them and himself. And then they have to start the loop again.
I just like loop.
Because... Same. So next thing is Stage Fright, which is Phantom of the Opera. There's not really very many similarities between these two. There is a phantom. Instead of a musical, instead of an opera, there's a musical. There's people putting it on, but they get scared off temporarily because of the so-called phantom that might or might not exist.
I was gonna look what the name of it was. It's something Heart Theater. It's something with like 3 syllables.
Reinhardt Theater?
No,
I don't know.
Because it's 2 different last names. It's like the...
Anyway. Duncan Banquo Hart Theater.
Yes, that's it.
I did it. And that's pretty much it. There's not that much stuff. This next one, you'd think it'd be easy to be really close to the adaptation, but maybe it's because it doesn't have...
What number are we on, by the way?
16.
All right.
Snow White and the 7 Deadly Dwarves. And Snow White.
Yeah.
So, with this one, I put it so far down on the list, even though, like, Snow White's a pretty simple story. Doesn't have Snow's mom. It doesn't have Snow's dad, technically.
Because he's the
stepladder father.
I realized
the stepmother.
I only realized that for the first time when we were doing the first program. I was like, wait a minute, he's not Snow's father.
So
he's the stepladder father. So is he... But he's also not the stepmother.
So
he's also the prince.
I've given this a lot of thought.
Because Bethany's like 7, so...
These are the characters that are in the original Snow White.
Giving her a romance would be weird and gross.
There's Snow, there's the Queen, there's the Mom, there's the Dad, there's the Dwarves, which we're all going to roll into one, because...
You're racist against dwarves. No,
they're super interchangeable in this one. They don't really matter. I mean, they do, but they don't.
They're the 7 deadly sins, so they're kind of different.
And then there is the Prince and the Mirror. And I believe that's everyone. So in this, we have Snow, and she's pretty much the same thing. We have the Mother, who is not there. And we have the father, who's not there. We have the stepmother, who is now the stepfather and nice. And so, like, there but changed to the point where basically unrecognizable. We have the prince, who's basically
the same character.
Only because he's the one that wakes Snow up. So, like, super different because also the father.
Yeah.
There's the dwarves, which are now the Sins, and they're actually the villains, so, like, they're super different. And then there's the Mirror, who's the other villain. So...
And is now Hal 9000.
Yeah, now Hal 9000. I know there are people who argue that the Mirror is the true villain of Snow White, but we're not going to look at that theory, even though I think it's
never heard that, although that does make sense.
I will talk to you more about it later. It's interesting. So yeah, it's super different. Everything's so different. And there's like a lot of comedy interjected and everything's really changed or left out.
Comedy in a generally loose sense of the word.
There's no murder.
More like, there's snow murder, am I right? I'm not, because they don't kill her.
That's kind of how the story starts. There's like blood and snow.
Yeah, there's snow murder.
So next one we can both talk about now. What is it, Devin?
It's Casablanca. It is Sunset Bowlawater.
Yep.
Which is Sunset Boulevard.
The movie from 1950. It was very good, in my opinion.
It's a clever
Not
title.
as good as 12 Angry Men, but still really
The
good.
Odyssey episode has a cleverer title than the name of the movie, really. Because the movie's just named after the street that she lived on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is like a super fancy big street in Hollywood.
Honestly, the movie could have been named a bunch of different things.
It could have. But this
I
episode
don't think
couldn't have.
Sunset Boulevard's a bad name for it, though.
They are way more different than I was expecting.
They have, like, 2 things in common. That's it.
Yeah, basically...
And they're both pretty small.
Basically, the common things I knew about it, which is what it says in the guide, which is how I knew it, is all of the similarities between them. Because I knew the similarities, which the guy says...
We watched this movie together, by the way.
Which is that it is about someone who is a murder victim, and...
Joe Gillis.
Well, I'm talking about both of them.
Okay.
It's about someone who is a murder victim, and that the story is narrated by the person who has been murdered, and that we, like, go
and
back
they're floating
and see...
in a body of water.
Well, we didn't know that. And then we go back and see how they died as narrated by the person who died.
Yeah.
The biggest difference is just by genre, I think, because of the way Sunset Bowlawater is, and because of that description, I always assumed that meant that, like Sunset Bowlawater, that the movie would be like a mystery where you're trying to figure out how he died, and he's narrating, like, trying to solve his own death, who killed me, because that's like Harlow's trying to figure out how did Crackers die, and it turned out it was Mandy's fault.
So,
Spoilers.
Yeah. He's also Jay Gatsby. He's, like, floating dead in a pool of water. So they have that in the episode too. The mystery with Sunset Boulevard, which I guess is the reason why
a mystery at
it's
all.
Categorized as a film noir. It is not in black. Oh, yeah, it is in black and white. Sorry.
Yes.
It's not really how he died or who killed him.
I wouldn't say it's why he died either.
It's really obvious. I would say it's more why he died.
I would say that's pretty obvious from, like, halfway through the film.
You know he's gonna... Yeah, but you don't know, like, all the specific reasons.
No, but it's not like, oh, there's so many different reasons it could be. It's like, it's pretty clear.
Yeah, but we were watching it and we were like, okay, is it because he's having an affair on the side? Or is it because he's writing a script about a romance?
And the answer was both.
The answer was both. So.
And I figured it was probably going to be both.
Oh, Salome, John the Baptist.
The Dance of the Seven Veils.
Yeah, so it's about this guy named Joe Gillis who gets killed by Norma Desmond.
I'm ready for my close-up, Mr. DeMille.
Alright, Mr. DeMille, I'm ready for my close-up.
No, I am your father. And Mary Beth, the Ice Princess, is your sister.
I don't really... I might have heard Mr. DeMille, I'm ready for my close-up or whatever before. I'm not sure if I have, though.
Really?
That's
like a
that
really
kind of sounds
famous
familiar,
line.
But
I've heard that like 100 times.
That's
I'm pretty sure they said that on Odyssey at some point. I'm sure.
They could have. I don't know. It's just not something where, like, if you hadn't pointed it out, I wouldn't really have thought twice about that line. Or,
Yeah,
like,
well, I
really
almost
even
didn't
remembered
catch it just because... I mean, as soon as they're like Mr. DeMille, I was like, oh, he's like the guy from the line that people always say. But,
speaking of amazing movie shots.
so that's where this movie is, where that line is
There's the entire last scene of this movie.
Which has nothing to do with the
Everything
comparison.
is perfect. It doesn't have to do with the comparison. I just want to like give it some praise. It's beautiful. It has a tracking shot of Norma Desmond walking down the stairs towards the cameras, and then she says the last line in the movie, and it's just like so well shot and beautiful, and the acting is great.
It's very like Renaissance,
the lady who
way
plays
everyone
Norma
is like
Desmond
frozen and posing.
Is a queen. She's such a good actress.
She's so funny.
She's really funny. It's also kind of sad though, because she's one of those characters where you're like,
It's
oh,
like a tragic,
you're crazy.
Yeah.
This is really funny. And then you get farther in the movie and you're like, oh, this is actually like kind of uncomfortable. And you get to the end and you're like, this is actually really sad. And then it ends. Good movie though. Yeah.
That was alright.
I liked it.
Yeah,
I think
I
I'd
know.
give it like a solid 8 out of 10.
And this apparently has been our review of Sunset Boulevard. Okay, so yeah, there's really not much in similarity besides that. One interesting structural thing that I noticed was Crackers died because Mandy became taken with someone else, whereas Joe died because Joe died because Joe was taken with someone else, not Norma. So that was kind of like a flip in terms of that relationship.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting difference that you can actually make a structural comparison to. Everything else is it's very different besides the stuff that we already knew going into it.
So that was my list. How did I do?
It was pretty good. Pretty good. Better. I would never have an idea how to categorize the order of these things in the list. So
I rank a lot of things.
let's read it through one more time, and then we should let these poor people
that we held
free.
hostage.
Yes, from our hostage situation.
Okay. So, want to alternate on them?
Yes.
So, we're going to read, do you want to read 1 to 17? Or
Sure.
17 to 1? Let's do 17 to 1.
Sure, we'll count up again. That's a good idea. Okay, so number 17, Sunset Bowlawater, which is Sunset Boulevard.
Number 16, 7 Deadly Dwarves / Snow White.
Number 15, My Fair Bernard is My Fair Lady.
Number 14.
Did we talk about that?
Oh, we missed it. Oh, no. we have to delete the recording and start over again.
Quickly.
Okay. Oh, I feel so bad about this one. I can't believe we missed it. I'm a failure. Okay, so My Fair Bernard.
You only like single space them with nothing in between.
My Fair Bernard. This one's right after Stage Fright for reference.
It's number 50.
Yeah, that's what I meant. So My Fair Bernard is My Fair Lady. There's not a lot of similarities between like a character.
It took me a long time to understand the title of this episode.
Wants to become more posh and like more proper and stuff, so they can kind of get more recognize. Yeah. Some more
recognizance.
Yeah, that's it.
That's not the right word.
They can get some more recognition.
Recognition.
Thank you, recognition. I'm tired, Devin. I've been doing this for a long time. This is the second time I've had to do this.
I know, it's like twice as long.
He wants to get more recognition and stuff, so then someone else like teaches them, but they're thinking more selfishly about how awesome they are for teaching this person.
And there's like a bet, right?
And there's a bet in My Fair Lady. I wouldn't really say there's a bet in My Fair Bernard.
No, I was talking about My Fair Lady.
And then it ends with the person. The endings are very different. The endings are definitely where the most divergence happens. Eliza in My Fair Lady. My Fair Lady is like really tragic, but everyone's like, it's so romantic. And I'm like, her boyfriend is the worst human being ever and abusive, and I hate him. And he's supposed to be regarded as a charming prince, and he also can't sing. So, like, don't talk to me.
Sometimes fiction just be that way.
No,
I mean
bad.
Yeah, I know. That's what I mean. Like bad romance characters that people are like, oh, it's so charming that you're like stalking and abusive.
I mean, like,
That
he's not
sometimes that's how
stalking.
that
He's
be.
just super abusive.
I know. I'm just talking about like
the
many
other
other things.
The other love interest is stalkering.
Like
he's a stalker.
Phantom of the
So it's either she
Opera
ends up with a stalker
and
or she
50
ends up with someone
Shades.
super abusive. And it's like, neither of these are good situations, but at least end up with the stalker, because like once you're with him, he won't stalk you, and he's not abusive at all. I doubt he could hurt a fly. You could definitely do more damage than he could. In fact, her entire song towards
Let's
that guy
talk about...
is her yelling at him. Just, My Fair Lady gets me super worked up. The ending of My Fair Lady is really sad because Eliza has become a posh lady who no longer fits in with the social class that she used to. She used to sell flowers on the street and stuff and warm herself around a garbage fire. And she like tries to go back and see her friends, but they all think she's like a lady and they're all asking her for like her business and stuff. And it's actually like the saddest scene in the movie. It breaks my heart every time I see it. But My Fair Bernard basically like
Surely she could have
just
like rile up and like spit really far, and they would have been like, "Oh, Eliza, we'd know you're like your spit anywhere."
You'd think that like they would recognize her face at least. I know she's wearing makeup and stuff, and she's a lot more cleaned up.
They gave her heavy reconstructive surgery.
She still has the same face structure, guys.
They like touristed her.
Oh, the tourist. That movie's such a mess, but I love it so much. And My Fair Bernard basically like takes over everything and makes it his own thing, and he stays the same. If you missed My Fair Bernard, you would not miss any significant aspects of Bernard's character or life. He'd still be the same between both episodes if you skip that one. My Fair Lady, if you skip the period of time in Eliza's life, like before and after the movie, if you skip the movie era of her life and you just look at the beginning stuff and the after stuff, you will not recognize this person as the same person. So it's very, very different. Anyway.
Yeah, I think you could make a comparison, even though there isn't a bet in My Fair Bernard. I think you could compare it to the fact that the guys changing Eliza were like trying to prove to the other people in the bet that they were capable of like turning someone or turning her into someone fancy. And Edwin,
okay, the bet.
Edwin was trying to prove to Rosencrantz Guildenstern that he could, be high class by turning Bernard into someone fancy.
The bet in My Fair Lady is the Henry Higgins, the guy who turns Eliza into a more upper class lady. He's told that he is very unskilled at his job as a linguist and like helping people work on their accents and teaching them and stuff. And so he has like this kind of arch enemy guy who also has the same job, and he bets that he can like figure out anyone's social class and where they are from in the world just through their accent.
I mean, when you live in London, it's not that hard.
Well, I mean, like that's what that guy's famous for. But there's actually he doesn't come into play later. Higgins bets with his best friend, who's actually like a super nice guy, that he could take anyone, and he's like, even that wretch over there, and he like points at Eliza. She's like swearing at people and warming her hands at the garbage fire. He's like, I bet I could fool people into thinking that she's like a rich duchess from Germany or something like that. And then they do that.
He goes up to Eliza. He goes up to Eliza and he's like, I can make you a fancy lady and you'll sound very proper. And she's like, go away, you're here to steal my root beer barrels.
Honestly, that's kind of what happens. He's like, I'm gonna make you posh, and she starts swearing at him, and she's like, get out of here.
Work cut out for me.
Yeah, pretty much.
And he's like, yep, nailed it in one. Nice, anyway. Yes, and Eliza.
Anyway, I'm just gonna read through these really quick because I'm super hungry.
Okay, number 15, My Fair Bernard is My Fair Lady.
Okay, we're gonna start again.
All right, 17, Sunset Bowlawater, Sunset Boulevard.
16, Seven Deadly Dwarves, Snow White.
15, My Fair Bernard's My Fair Lady.
14, Stage Fright, Phantom of the Opera.
13, Groundhog Jay is Groundhog Day.
12?
Yes.
12, BTV-Revenge, Count of Monte Cristo.
Tie for 10 is Thankstaking story, which is The Grinch That Stole Christmas, and The Merchant of Odyssey is The Merchant of Venice.
Number 9, Terror for the Skies is War of the Worlds, the event and the book.
Number 8 is An Act of Nobility, which is The Prisoner of Zenda.
The movie. Pinocchio, Tale of a Foolish Puppet for number 7 is Pinocchio.
Number 6, The Great Wishy Woz is The Wizard of Oz.
Number 5, Thanksgiving Carol is a Christmas Carol.
Thanks, Christmas Carol.
Yep, that's it.
Number 4, Pilgrim's Progress Revisited is Pilgrim's Progress.
Blind Justice is 12 Angry Men for number 3.
Number 2, It's a Pokenberry Christmas is It's a Wonderful Life.
And number 1, Gifts from Madge and Guy is Gifts from the Magi. Thank you.
So what do we do next time, Victoria? They're back again.
Part 3.
Yes. And?
BTV Redeeming the season because it's December.
Yes. And?
The OAC season review for 2017.
Correct.
Even though it's 2018.
So that was all for now. Thank you for joining us on our side of YouTube and for this very long episode. It was an hour and a half, the original version, and then we got longer. Predictably, we always do, even though we think it'll be easier the second time.
Yep.
I've been Devin Francis, also known as Leonard Meltzner.
And you didn't steal my root beer. I don't know what accent that was.
Thank you, and good night.